Cleveland Browns star defensive end Myles Garrett has requested a trade officially to a contender. Should the 49ers be that contender for Myles Garrett? All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love all the everydayers out there. Welcome. See a lot of you jumping in on this live episode, a little lunchtime live here on this Monday. We got some great news around trade season in the sporting world right now. This is fun. This is fun stuff. So Myles Garrett, I've got a lot of thoughts on Myles Garrett, by the way, if he should be a San Francisco 49er. And to be honest, he should have been all along, in my opinion. We'll get into that as well. What the 49ers would have to give up if they wanted to get in on the Myles Garrett sweepstakes. And the latest on Brock Purdy as well. So thanks to all the everydayers that are out there with us. Welcome to the new listeners. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you listen to your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedon. NFL terms and conditions apply. All right, Croc. Short answer. Myles Garrett says, I want out. I want to be traded. Should the San Francisco 49ers be involved?
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely, they should be involved.
That's the short answer. The longer answer is when the 49ers are at their best and they're the most competitive, it's when they have just a stout defense. And you add a guy like Myles Garrett to Nick Bosa on that line, and you get some guys back, and you still, at the moment, have a high draft pick. Obviously, if you get Garrett, you may lose that high draft pick, but just making it to where your defensive line is one to fear once again, that would help the 49ers a lot. I think a lot of people still, the 49ers have kind of this thing that's casting over the NFL that they think the 49ers still have a great defensive line as if it's 2019 and there's DeForest Buckner, Nick Bosa, D Ford, Eric Armstead. It hasn't been that group in a few years. So, man, you get a guy like Myles Garrett, whatever it takes to get him. Yeah, you got to pay him. You're already paying Nick Bosa. You just got to figure it out because that's going to make everything a lot easier, not just for the defense, but for the offense as well.
So there's a lot of layers to this. As of now, and if for those of you who have not heard, let's read the official statement from Myles Garrett. And you feel for Myles Garrett. It's been 8 years. 2017, he was drafted number 1 overall. He said, as a kid, dreaming of the NFL, I focused on what was the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl. And that goal fuels me today more than ever. My love for the community of Northeast Ohio and the incredible fan base of the Cleveland Browns has made this one of the toughest decisions of my life. These past 8 years have shaped me into the man I am today. While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. Well, he's going to pull that off as well, I think. But he says, it's always been to compete and win a Super Bowl. With that in mind, I have requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns, Myles Garrett, signed MG95. So I think he's going to go to Canton, so he doesn't have to even worry about that part. That part takes care of himself. But the dude wants to win, and he sees that it's not happening, hasn't happened consistently well before he showed up, and doesn't look like it's on the horizon for the Cleveland Browns now to win either. And he's tired of that. He wants out. He wants to go to a contender, Croc. So what are the teams that make sense? First, who would the Niners be competing with? And do the Niners really, really make sense? Like we say, yeah, go get them. But are the 49ers that team right now to go get Myles Garrett?
We'll get to the other teams, but I think as it pertains to the 49ers, I think the toughest thing right now is, you think a salary cap, right? Like just paying that much money for your bookends on defense, and you'll lose out in other places. There's guys like, Travarius Ward, Talanoa Hufanga. What are they going to cost on the open market? You trade for a guy like Myles Garrett, you're less likely going to be able to bring those guys back, even at a reduced price. So I think, moving forward, that's what the 49ers have to think, like, how does this fit into that? I could see some players that the 49ers have that are big contract guys kind of falling off, right? Over the next year or so, are you still going to be paying Trent Williams, third highest paid money as a tackle? Like, if not, that kind of frees up some money that can go towards a guy like Myles Garrett. Are you going to eventually get a guy like Deebo Samuel off of your books? So that can make a little bit more sense. But I think first and foremost, it's the 49ers kind of figuring out what their situations are, who would they like to, keep around for a year or two longer. You got the Brock Purdy contract coming up. What is that going to look like? And with that, make it difficult to go get a guy like Myles Garrett, who you are going to have to pay not just for this year, but into the future as well. So there's definitely some huge questions. But, a lot of people say, man, the salary cap is a myth. It's not really a myth, but there definitely are ways to work around the salary cap to make something happen if you truly want that guy on the team. So for that, it does make sense. They can make it work, but you will lose a little bit in other places.
There will have to be some give and take there. And, you put more and more on the credit card. They've already started some of that. There's a lot of void years already for a lot of contracts. Brock Purdy will no doubt have some void years on his contract. Can they figure out a way to get it done? Yes, these things are always possible. But again, you're going to lose out on some other things as well. You're going to lose out on draft picks. How does that impact how you're building the football team? But one thing we've seen from the San Francisco 49ers is how competitive they are in these situations. When these types of players are available, the 49ers are in on it, and they're interested in these types of players. They went out and got Trent Williams. They went out and got Christian McCaffrey. They're not afraid to bid and even win a bidding war for these types of players as well. And so I would expect the 49ers to be interested in Myles Garrett because he can be a difference-making player and happens to just hit a pretty hard need for the San Francisco 49ers. Can they fit it all in? Can they make all the contracts work? It's possible, and it gets more and more difficult, especially when you have a really expensive quarterback. They can probably push some things down the road and get creative. So we'll see if the 49ers are indeed in on it. To me, the biggest question becomes are the Browns really going to do this? And are the 49ers on potentially Myles Garrett's list? Because this isn't a situation where the Browns just can trade Myles Garrett anywhere. It's going to be a situation where Myles Garrett has some say in where he goes as well, which I think in the end could probably help a team like the San Francisco 49ers, who have a tradition of winning, who's much more likely to be on his list of teams he would like to play for versus a team like the Browns or versus some other teams around the NFL that might be willing to win a bidding war and have a ton of cap space, but aren't in the position to be a competitive football team and don't have a tradition of winning. If Myles Garrett wants out of Cleveland, well, what's the antithesis of what the Cleveland Browns have been for the last, 30, 40 years? Well, the 49ers have been an exemplary franchise that have been at the top multiple times and are probably in a point that they could sell Myles Garrett, that they are going to be at the top again in 2025. And so would it be a team that is on Myles Garrett's short list of teams that he would want to go to in this situation? I think that does help the San Francisco 49ers. I want to talk about some more of those teams where the 49ers would sit in this, what it would take for the San Francisco 49ers to make a trade for someone like Myles Garrett. But first, according to Jeremy Fowler, ESPN, a source on the Browns says their stance amid this Myles Garrett trade request has not changed. Nothing has changed, quote. The team has said publicly it has no plans to trade Myles Garrett. So we'll see if this becomes a standoff and gets ugly with Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns. If this goes into the spring and he doesn't show up, and if that's what kind of situation we're talking about, is this end up being a post-draft thing, which really starts to make it haywire and screwy for a lot of situations and a lot of teams and a lot of team building for both the Browns and their plans and Myles Garrett. And so a lot of that is yet to be decided. As of now, the Browns have not said that they would be willing to trade Myles Garrett. Croc, next. Let's talk about what this would actually cost and what other teams might be in on the bidding for Myles Garrett next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work does not end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in, because when you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions. And they know you wear so many hats as a small business owner, so they want to make the job hiring process easy. And they do that by helping you write job descriptions, get people to quickly see your job, get it in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. You add the hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Croc. Niners, I think, should be in on it. And I think they should be on Myles Garrett's list. If you just had to guess what those teams were that are on Myles Garrett's list, I think the San Francisco 49ers would be one of those. If you're staying in the NFC, I bet he would have the Los Angeles Rams on that list. I bet he would have the Detroit Lions on his list. I bet he'd have the Philadelphia Eagles on his list. You know, Myles Garrett, when he's sitting at home and he's writing up this message to his fans and to the team, and he's thinking about, man, I'm going to officially go public and request this trade. What's happening? He's watching these other teams play football, right? So he's going to have those teams on his list probably, right? Thinking about where he would rather be in January rather than sitting at home and writing a list of teams to go to, writing a letter to the team requesting a trade. The Buffalo Bills come to mind. I bet the Kansas City Chiefs is on the list too. Dude, spend 2 first-round picks to keep him away from the Kansas City Chiefs, please, whether it's the Bills or the Niners, somebody. Let's not let him go there, right? He's not going to go to the teams in the same division as the Browns. So the Steelers, Ravens, those teams are going to be out. Man, could the Cincinnati Bengals use Myles Garrett? But, yeah, no way that the Cleveland Browns sent him there. And maybe the Browns would rather send him to the NFC. So there are some reasons why when you start to whittle down the list of teams, let's say there's a half a dozen teams on his list. Okay, well, now you're cutting out some other teams that might be able to bid. And so that makes it a little bit easier for, say, the San Francisco 49ers, Croc. And here's the biggest advantage the San Francisco 49ers have right now, Croc. And I don't know that it's necessarily the most they're like the most likely team to go trade for Myles Garrett, but here's a huge advantage the San Francisco 49ers have. They just happen to come off a season where they're picking 11. The Buffalo Bills, they're picking 30. The Kansas City Chiefs are picking 30 or 31, or 31 or 32. The Eagles are picking 31 or 32. The Detroit Lions hold the 28th pick in the draft. The Niners pick at 11 is worth 2 of those picks. So the 49ers can say, well, here's 11 plus. The Bills would have to say, here's our first this year and our first next year, just to be worth that 1 pick for the San Francisco 49ers. So advantage San Francisco 49ers coming off a bad year, because I think they're still looked at as a competitive team, a team that would be on Myles Garrett's list. They're in the NFC, which might be a preferred destination to send Myles Garrett from the standpoint of the Cleveland Browns. And they have a first-round pick that's more valuable than those other contending teams that are likely at the top of Myles Garrett's wish list.
You know, a team that scares me, and again, for all those points, it makes sense that where the 49ers can have the upper hand in a potential trade. But the Washington Commanders, and shout out to my guy, Terra Dome, he's all over. He says the Commanders are on the phone right now trying to make something happen. And obviously you hear the Cleveland Browns come out and say what they're supposed to say. Hey, our stance hasn't changed on this defensive end. Myles Garrett, we want to keep him. We want Myles Garrett to be a Cleveland Brown for the rest of his career. They're supposed to say that. And the biggest reason as to why is you don't want other players to be able to, you know, just come out and say, hey, I want to request a trade. And then you have to grant that trade as well. So you have to set the precedence of, hey, this is a guy we have no plans on trading. I think that also makes teams have to potentially kind of up the value on what they give, which again, why that potentially could work in the favor of the San Francisco 49ers. But the Commanders, man, that's a scary team because you have your quarterback on his rookie contract. It's not like you have to pay him next year or the year after that. He'll be on that rookie contract for a while. They need to continue to build this roster. And one thing that you and I talked about, and when you look at what it takes to, make a win a Super Bowl, make a conference championship game, make a playoff run. The Commanders aren't a team that like has all the pieces. That's why a lot of people think like, oh, Jane Daniels rookie year, he's doing this, going to a conference championship game. Oh, just wait till next year. And it's like, I don't know, because I don't think his team is very good. And I think they were very fortunate this year that he played as well as he did. And you got to hope that there's not even any kind of drop off, not just from him, but from everyone, because it's not the most talented roster. You got him, you got Terry McLaurin, and I guess Zach Ertz. I guess, like it's not this star-studded, loaded team. So having a guy like Myles Garrett come in and play with guys like Payne, like that would make a tremendous difference to that team. And then maybe, second round, third round, you start to address some of the secondary that was very leaky in this game, maybe sign a free agent linebacker, and now you're cooking. So for a team like the Commanders, I would 100% be on the phone right now, because on that defense, they have so many holes, but he can kind of clog up a couple of big holes by himself.
As Ryan puts in the chat, yikes, 49ers have to trade for him just to keep him away from the Eagles, Lions, and Rams. So this is going to be a competitive thing, and the competitive teams at the top are going to be battling with the other teams potentially that are vying for the services of Myles Garrett. The Washington Commanders does make a lot of sense. They're a trust the process organization, though, right? And so, do they want to start hitting the fast forward button on the thing they're building there because of how quickly things came together this year? We saw what happened with CJ Stroud and the Texans. Like, they were pretty good this year, but they didn't take that big step that everyone expected in year two for them. So that is a cautionary tale for the Washington Commanders and how difficult it is to get back there, and how remarkable of what a season was there for them, for the Washington Commanders with their rookie quarterback. But they have a huge need for a player like Myles Garrett. Could they pull that off? I think it's absolutely a possibility, and probably would be a team that Myles Garrett would say, like, yeah, I like what's going there. They got it's a team going places. I want to be on that team. So so a half a dozen or so teams that really start to make a lot of sense for Myles Garrett. Could the 49ers be among them? I think they could. But I say bring Myles Garrett home, Croc, because he should have been a 49er all along. We've talked about this before, and I bring it up all the time. And I implore anyone out there to go back and remind themselves what it was like in Week 17, the final week of the season, the Browns against the Pittsburgh Steelers at the end of the 2016 season. And the Cleveland Browns did everything they possibly could, hilariously, comically, to lose that game in overtime against the Steelers, who started Landry Jones because the Steelers were already in the playoffs. So the Steelers were just like giving away a game, and the Browns could not win. The Browns were up early. The Browns had a pick six. Dude dives into the end zone, gets hit, fumbles the ball out of bounds for a touchback. That's in the first half. Fourth quarter of the game, Isaiah Crowell runs the ball in, fumbles at the 2-yard line. Either one of those plays would have won them the game. The Browns should have won this game. Ends up going to overtime. The 49ers and the Browns ended up losing the game to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Browns had no business losing that game. It was the worst game I ever seen in my life. They should have won that game. Niners should have had the first pick in the draft in 2017. The Shanahan-Lynch era should have started with Myles Garrett. They can fix that now, though, and they can bring in Myles Garrett, bring him home. He's from Texas, but I say bring him home because he should have been a San Francisco 49er all along. And, man, Niners maybe never ended up with Bosa if they do draft Myles Garrett, though. But now they could put Bosa and Garrett on the same defensive line. There's very few players I'd be like, okay, let's get out of this. Let's break the process that we're on. We need to draft and develop. You need to get cheaper. Got a lot of star players, a lot of expensive players. Myles Garrett's one of the few players, maybe the only player in the league, actually, Croc, that I'd be like, yeah, you know what? They got to go for this. And you got to kind of abandon that. And if you can add a player that's this much of a difference maker, you got to do it.
We've always talked about the 49ers, their process, their plan, and hopefully their plan, at least this offseason, or at least, I don't even want to say their plan, but at least I hope they go about just the process of looking into this better than some of the other situations in the way that they've handled it.
I see a lot of trade ideas and trade options, Croc. I think some of them are a little bit out there. We joked actually on the last podcast. So I didn't know that Myles Garrett was going to legitimately officially off or request a trade. There were some rumblings that he might want out. But I talked about trade Brock Purdy for Myles Garrett. I would absolutely trade Brock Purdy for Myles Garrett. Like I would trade 2 first-round picks. I would trade Brock Purdy for Myles Garrett. There's a lot I would do to go get Myles Garrett. I think he's that much of a difference maker and would help out the San Francisco 49ers a ton. But I don't think it's likely that that's what would happen. It would be probably draft picks and maybe a player thrown in or something like that. So let's debunk some of these offers. What would it actually look like? What's the offer for the San Francisco 49ers? How does this get done? What do the Niners have to give up to bring in Myles Garrett from the Cleveland Browns next? Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Prize Picks. It's a big game. What game is more fun to play along with than the big game? And the big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, just the stat projections at Prize Picks. You're not playing against the other players. You're just playing against those stat projections. And if you go more or less on at least 2 player stat projections, and if you hit and you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. So now you already have one. You got to pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. For example, you might be looking at Travis Kelce, more than receiving yards, or you might like more than rushing touchdowns for Saquon Barkley. Tons of promos as well, like the super sweet Millie winners, big game lineups, and tons more. Just download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL at Prize Picks for $50 instantly after you place your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. This episode is also presented by Game Time. And if you're looking for tickets for your next big event, maybe even last-minute tickets to the big game, because you can find those at Game Time. Any tickets to any event you're looking for, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, a sporting event, an NFL football game, an NBA game. You want to go see the latest, you want to go see Luka play for the Lakers. As disgusting as that might be for some folks, you can do that as well with Game Time. And Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. Game Time Picks, the app, does all the hard work for you, curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings if you're going to an event with, say, 60,000 seats potentially available in the arena. And the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. So, you ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
I like how you threw in the Lakers on that, man. I mean, Landon, Luka Doncic. They're saying it's the fat version of them, but I'll take whatever version of them we can get right now.
I mean, there's not going to be a fat version of Myles Garrett. You know, you're going to get an in shape dude when you get Myles Garrett. The question is, when the Niners trade Brock Purdy for Myles Garrett, is Brock the Luka side and Myles Garrett's the Anthony Davis side because he's an older player, right? Or is it the other way around? I don't even know.
Luka's very young, 25 years old. Yeah, he's younger than Brock Purdy. Crazy, right? Like we've been seeing Luka in the NBA for so long, and I want to say Brock is 26 years old.
I think he's around 25. He might be going into his age 26 season, but he's pretty close. He's right in there somewhere. Yeah.
That's kind of the crazy part. But yeah, what is that version? Have we seen an NFL version of this trade in like past years? The only thing I could come up with that was remotely close. Like when I heard that, the first thing that popped in my head, one, there's not a lot of like big time guy for big time guy trades in the NFL, but Clinton Portis and Champ Bailey, like my mind instantly went there.
Like a shocker trade out of nowhere. That's hard because I don't remember if there was any rumblings of those types of players being available at the time, but the shocking factor in all of this is that there was no lead up to it. It's like you trade
They said they didn't know.
You trade that big of a superstar player, like out of nowhere, like with the Browns, like this is gonna be out there for a while, right? And you're gonna see it coming. It would be more like for a star player like Luka, it would have to be a big time quarterback. It'd be like Joe Burrow. All of a sudden you wake up, hey, Joe Burrow just got traded, right? And be like, what? Yeah. Out of nowhere. Maybe he's not the number one guy in the NFL, but he's one of the top guys. And you just don't trade that type of player. And you certainly don't just trade that player out of nowhere for no reason. And it would be like Joe Burrow getting traded to like the Cowboys. Because it's like, how do the Lakers keep getting these types of deals too? Like that's the team you had.
CeeDee Lamb, right? Like that would be Burrow getting traded to the Cowboys for CeeDee Lamb, who's been like an ultra, productive player for the Cowboys since drafting him.
Yeah, no, I mean, suppose Lamb's still young. Is like an older because Garrett kind of fits the bill, like a freak dude. He was a super high draft pick, a freaky player that's maybe on the back nine of his career. Because Myles Garrett, is not young anymore. He's been in the league for 8 years, as dominant as he still is. That's why I feel like Myles Garrett's kind of like the Anthony Davis of the trade because he's the older player. But he's also more of a difference-making player than Anthony Davis is currently in his career, even though Anthony Davis.
Oh, wait.
You think that Anthony Davis is a better NBA player than Myles Garrett is an NFL player? Because I'll fight you on that all day.
No, okay. I don't. But Anthony Davis, he's averaging right now. He's like 26, 12, and however many blocks a game, like defensive player of the year type stuff. Like he should be in the running for it. Every year he's putting up 26. Any given night he can put up 30, and he just had like a 30, like a 40-point game with like 23 rebounds or something like ridiculous like that. Like he's going crazy right now. The health thing, he was very healthy last year. This year, how much he's going to play? But Myles Garrett, I mean, he is always healthy, and we're comparing a 29-year-old version of Myles Garrett to a 32-year-old Anthony Davis, which basketball years is a little different because at 29, even for Luka, right? I just talked about Luka and Purdy and their ages. Luka's been in the league for like a long time, it feels like, as opposed to Purdy. And I'd say the same. Like Myles Garrett feels like he's been in the league for a while, but Anthony Davis, I mean, he's 32. He's been in the league since he's like 19.
Yeah, it's crazy how young these NBA guys are and how early they get into the league, and barely spend any time in college, and they always feel a lot older than they actually are. It's crazy how young a lot of these dudes are. But yeah, like imagine one of these.
Why do you keep saying Trey Purdy?
Just for fun.
Okay.
Well, because look, the reality is like you got to start spending money somewhere, and it's like, okay, what are the trade chips that you have? You save money and you save a whole bunch of draft picks. If the Browns are like, oh, we want Brock Purdy. Okay, give me Darnold and Myles Garrett. It's a better football team. I mean, it's just simple to me. I know it's hard for people, and they got their 13 jerseys, and I love Brock Purdy. But if the equation is Brock Purdy at $60 million a year, or Myles Garrett plus Sam Darnold at $60 million per year, give me Sam Darnold and Myles Garrett. I mean, I think it's just a simple thing, and I don't think it would ever happen. It's not going to happen, but and I'm not trying to trade Brock Purdy, but I just think that would be a very interesting. Well, here's the thing about the Browns is they still have to pay Deshaun Watson too, so I don't know if they can even take on a player like Brock Purdy and then pay him, because then they're paying like $150 million a year for quarterbacks.
We had someone in our comments say Brock Purdy and pick 11 for Myles Garrett and Deshaun Watson. I'm like, bro, I don't want anything to do with Deshaun Watson.
No,
aside from the creepy stuff, he's just not good.
Oh, I could see why the Browns would try to attach Watson to Myles Garrett, but you're getting rid of all the value that you would get for Myles Garrett. Essentially, those are the picks now. Right? Like you're not getting picks and giving away Deshaun Watson. You can either attach Deshaun Watson to Myles Garrett and hope a team takes all of it, and then you're not getting much back, but you start over and you got a blank slate. Or you can keep Deshaun Watson. You can trade Myles Garrett and get the picks back for Myles Garrett. But if you start adding Myles or Deshaun, like you would have to pay people, you have to pay teams first round picks to take Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, no doubt.
You give me. I think if you said Myles Garrett, a first round pick, and Deshaun Watson for Brock Purdy, you could talk me into that. where okay, you're not giving up a pick. You get a pick because you're taking on this player that I think is just a bad football player.
Yeah, Watson. Oh yeah, and essentially you if you take on Watson, you're not even. It's like one of the NBA trades where his contract is on your books, but you're not even like, okay, here's your locker, Deshaun Watson. You're like, no, stay wherever you are. You were part of this deal, but you're gonna stay where you are. You're not coming. You're not playing football for us, right? That would be the Watson part of the trade. You're just taking them off of their roster. Although they would probably pay a lot. It's just not going to happen. What's that?
You see the Justin Tucker stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of creepy too.
Oh, dude, yeah, and it's a lot easier for the Ravens because they just like this. It's just like, okay, see you later. Looking for a new kicker. He was bad last year anyway. Like, when you have they don't have $250 million guaranteed contract on Justin Tucker, so they can just be like, okay, well, see you later, Justin Tucker. The Browns cannot do that with Deshaun Watson, which is like,
I know we're talking about
they did what they did to bring him in the first place.
I know we're talking about trades and stuff, and we're running out of time here a little bit, but real quick, something came up on my timeline with the 49ers giving George Kittle an extension. And it was like, I think he has one more year on his contract, and it talked about like 2 more years. And in my head, right, like the fan version of me, and this is something I haven't even really thought of, but the fan version of me is like, sign George Kittle to whatever. He's a lifelong 49er player. GM version of me starts to think about like, the Belichick and the Patriots, and this is a little different because I don't know what the value is of a tight end or George Kittle, an aging tight end, to the rest of the league. But if you were able to get anything valuable for him, but like, Bill Belichick was really good at getting rid of a player a year too early as opposed to a year too late. And with George Kittle, who's still playing at a very productive clip right now, and that's the thing, a lot of the pushback was, well, Croc, he's still playing at a very high level. And it's like, well, yeah, that's the point. Like you would get the most for him right now. I don't want to see him in a different jersey, but if I'm putting on my GM hat, I could see where instead of any extension, you got 1 year left. Like, I may trade you this offseason and get, if you can get a second round pick for him or something like that. Maybe he's more valuable than the second, and you just want to keep him, right? I think he is more valuable than the second, that you don't even know what that is. But it opens up, the window for a guy that we'll be talking about soon, but Warren, the tight end out of Penn State at pick 11. And, it kind of just opens up some different things, get younger at certain spots. But I think when it is a fan favorite, like a Brock Purdy or like a George Kittle, people don't like to have those kind of conversations.
No, not at all. Yeah. And if it's like another team's roster, you'd be like, oh, that would make sense for them, but this is our guy. I don't want to trade our guy. So it does start to get a little bit more difficult. And in the end, maybe a player would go the other way. But I think the Myles Garrett conversation would start with pick 11 this year and in the 49ers first round pick next year. I think it'd be something pretty close to that. And I think maybe at a certain point, the Browns could ask for even more. Some of those other teams at the end of the first round, they might ask for 3 first round picks to compete with an offer like that. But at the end of the day, I think Myles Garrett is going to have some say over the team he goes to, because he's going to have to sign an extension at some point with that team. And so it might mute what the Browns end up getting back. And so it might make it even a sweetheart deal in the end for what a team could the 49ers just give up 11 and like a second or something like that and a player, like it could end up being a deal like that if it even comes down to one team, right? Because once the player has a say, then it becomes a lot more difficult for the team to get the maximum amount. And a team like the Raiders might be willing to give up more, but it's like, well, he doesn't want to go to the Raiders, so that's not an option. So it ends up being between the 49ers and the Bills or something like that. Not impossible. This is interesting. Will the Browns end up relenting and trading him is the big question. And I don't think it'd be a bunch of players going the other way. It would be draft picks, and it would start with pick 11 for sure. and probably next year's first is my guess of what it would take to get Myles Garrett. And I think the 49ers wouldn't want to give up a bunch of players because they want to compete and they want to keep all their players. Like that's how Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are wired. They want to win and they're competitive. They would bring him in to play with the guys they have. They wouldn't be trading guys away. And that's usually not how the NFL trades go anyway. So there you go. Myles Garrett, future 49er.
I'd do it.
I would do it too. That'd be fun. Bring him home. He's belonged here. He should have been here for the last 8 years, right? He should have been a San Francisco 49er all along anyway. So do it right. Bring
Not
Myles
Solomon
Garrett.
Thomas, Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. Let us know what you think. Myles Garrett. We're going to be breaking down some more draft prospects on the next episode. The latest on Brock Purdy to come as well. We'll talk more about that. We got plenty of time to talk about what's going on with Brock Purdy and his contract negotiation and a whole lot more. So stay tuned right here. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Locked On 49ers.